Man, I thought our front played really well. The back end was clean with the first couple guys. Felt their presence back there. I felt we tackled well, So all the fundamentals, all that type of stuff. First time tackling for real, especially with the ones and twos. Felt like the guys who had the ball were taking good angles for the most part.
What did you think of?
Yes. They tackled well. They tackled great. They kept pressure on the Chargers for basically the entire game, and they didn't embarrass anybody. Hello, welcome to First Kick Seahawks, where we prepare you for the first kick of every play by game day. And man, I'm recording at like 2 a.m, which I don't want to do, but the problem was the NFL Plus didn't let me watch the game, and I didn't find out till the third quarter that I could watch it on Seahawks.com. And then on top of that, NFL Plus didn't actually play the game immediately after and make it available to me for replay. They instead were playing like a commercial-based thing where I didn't realize that was on until about the late second quarter. So I didn't get to start watching this game till about 10:45. And I tried to wait, but I was getting grouchy because awesome things were happening I was going to say yesterday on Saturday, right? Things were kicking ass. And I'm kind of proud of Mike Macdonald because he was able to turn around the Seahawks team really quickly. Before we get into it, please like the video. Subscribe to First Kick Seahawks. I would really appreciate that as we continue to grow the channel entering this 2024 season. And yeah, I have a lot of thoughts about that game, but the first one is, holy shit, Byron Murphy is as advertised. There was a few plays there where he was being triple teamed and he was still getting through. Look, it is a ballsy thing to say that any player is the next Aaron Donald, who might be the greatest defensive player ever, maybe even just straight up the greatest player ever. But my God, Byron Murphy looks exactly like him. The way that he moves his hips, the way that he gets his arms in position, his get off on the line, he looks lighter than he played in Texas. He looks faster than he played in Texas, which is crazy, right? And he's winning at the point of the snap. You put him in a one-on-one situation, you better be moving the ball 2 or 3 gaps away from him because by step 5, he's going to be in your face. And he was disruptive. And the crazy thing is, he didn't even start. He was the backup. He was going against number 2s, except for he did spar off against Joe Alt, the first-round pick of the Chargers, who went before Byron Murphy. He kind of pants that man quite a few times. And I'm excited. I'm excited because if you know anything about me, people talk about you build from the back end to the front. You build from the trenches to the back end, right? I don't believe in that necessarily. I believe in you build from the center to the visible side, and then the blind side is last. And aside from maybe our linebacker core, our defensive unit is stacked. It is absolutely stacked. We did get to see some Reed, Williams, and I didn't see Jones out there, but we saw some Nuosu and Mafe action out there. We also got to see Jonathan Hankins, who's that other defensive tackle that we have apparently competing with Byron Murphy for starting squad snaps. But I'll tell you what, if Draymond Jones ends up being really good too, look out NFC West. We are going to absolutely inhale offensive linemen. We're going to make them look embarrassed. If we go against the 49ers and Trent Williams isn't out there, Mafe is going to be all over Brock Purdy all day long. Boye Mafe, holy shit. He looks like what we expect him to be. I'm not saying he'd ever take off a play, but it looks like he's just bigger, faster, longer. And then he knows what to do with his body. but every single play. And so when you paired Boye Mafe with Murphy on the other side, their quarterback running back system just didn't work. They didn't have 130 yards against the Seahawks today. Granted, they were only on the field for about 20 minutes, and our offense was on the field for 40 minutes. But that has a lot to do with our defense. Chargers couldn't run the ball, which is like the whole thing with bringing in Greg Roman. And that was Jim Harbaugh's whole thing the last time he was a head coach in the NFL. Couldn't run the ball. Could barely pass the ball. Most of their passing yards came in the fourth quarter when their quarterback Perez came in. It was beautiful. Now, there were some missed tackles, but I'd say most of those were in the third and fourth quarter. There was some holding by our defensive backs, but those are like our fifth and sixth stringers. Our starters, as far as like Reek Woolen, he got beat on the first play, but the guy dropped the ball. He then also dropped an interception. Kobe Bryant, playing free safety, had an interception that was tipped, and then almost had a second one that was tipped. I think there was another interception in there, or at least a batted down interception. The defensive backs were flying around. They were hitting hard. And most importantly, they weren't getting embarrassed. You're going to get beat. It's a game, right? You can't just 100% smear this guy every single snap. Unless you're the LOB playing against the 2015 Bears and the 2015 Ravens. But when you look at the way that our guys were playing, and granted it's just a preseason game, they were absolutely throttling that Chargers team, who should have been prepared. And granted, team analysts and then other talk show hosts have been saying, yeah, the Chargers are going to go to the Super Bowl this year with Jim Harbaugh. And then they're saying with Mike Macdonald, oh, well, it's going to be a good rebuild year for him. We aren't rebuilding shit. I'd say after watching that game, we need another linebacker and we need another tackle, specifically right tackle. And then where are the other holes on the team? We're talking about depth positions at that point. We'll get a little bit into the offense, but I want to continue with the defense. When we looked at the linebacker core, we had Tyrell Dodson playing a lot at starter. And then we also had Tyrese Knight. Again, we're waiting for Jerome Baker to get healthy, but they were very sound in their gaps. They didn't have too much to do, and that's partly because we're not playing anything but base. But sound tackling, specifically from Dodson, I was impressed. And then the other thing that really, really got me was that he was knowing where to go instead of before a running back hit his gap. And the defensive line was setting up really good blocks for him to make a blitz and make a move on the running backs. When you look at Tyrese Knight, thing that I pointed out when we did tape evaluation of him is I don't want him going backwards. He's got really good acceleration to just fly straight down the field. And his 10 split in particular is really fucking good. And that was on display. He wasn't necessarily covering well, but he wasn't getting beat, right? The ball was going somewhere else, but he was constantly crashing straight into the gaps. And it was wonderful, right? It was exactly what I wanted from him. I didn't want him flipping his hips and then trying to follow somebody up a seam. Now, that might happen later, but for this game, it wasn't necessary. He was just blowing up that B gap all day long and then forcing the running back to move into the arms of Dotson or Byron Murphy. And even Mike Morris, right, dropped into coverage. He's like a defensive tackle, defensive end. He's a big-ass defensive end, right? And I didn't realize just how gigantic this man was. He's thick, right? We talked about thigh arms, Al Woods. he's like thigh arms Al Woods, but his entire body. And he just doesn't have like much fat on him. But we did see him cover the flats a few times, which I wouldn't ask him to do that against like a Christian McCaffrey or a Puka Nakua or a Cup, right? I wouldn't want him out on the flat trying to tackle Kyler Murray. But I'll tell you what, he was able to get in position and make the tackle. That was a constant problem with Pete Carroll's defenses these last 6 years, is that they just wouldn't make the tackle. Not only would they be late to every play, right? I referenced Dotson. He was able to just hit the hole on time and then make the play. But if you have a chance to make the play late and you're not doing it, it's disaster. A 5-yard run, which should have been a 2-yard run, is now a 15-yard run. And it gets your coach fucking fired, right? But everyone stayed in position. Everyone did their jobs on the defense. Even Nehemiah Pritchett. I said I didn't want to see him 10 yards off. I want to see him up front. Maybe not pressing, but I want to see him in line with the guy he's covering. Because otherwise he's constantly going to be breaking down and trying to accelerate to a ball he's never going to catch up to. And they didn't have him trailing. Sure, they had guys like Nehemiah dropping into deep coverage, but whenever they would do that, they would have somebody schemed underneath to take that spot. He didn't have that advantage in college. In college, he just had to tackle just a whole lot. And tackle he can do, right? But he's not being put in good coverage situations in man or in zone. He's just covering the deep to make sure he doesn't get blown over the top. It was nice to see him. It was nice to see Marquise Blair just fucking pop some guys in the fourth quarter. And that's a guy who should have been a starter if he could have stayed healthy. So if he's our backup to Julian Love, or if he's our backup nickel, that's exciting if he can stay healthy, because the rest of the team seems to be coached up really well on the defensive side. This isn't to say that we couldn't have had some improvement, but as far as the defensive line goes specifically, there's not much to improve on. There's not much to improve on at all. If Boye Mafe specifically, if Boye Mafe is legit and he ends up just rocking that side and Draymond Jones comes back healthy and goes back to his old ways, there is no reason that our defense can't be top 5 this year, which is crazy because we didn't really replace most of the roster. We just added better depth. If Reek Woolen goes back to the way he was, which there's not necessarily evidence of that, but there's evidence that he's healthy, that man can finally fucking tackle. And Trey Brown is legit like he's been and doesn't blow out his ACL again. Our defense should be top 5. I'm really goddamn excited about that. Before we go to offense, I want to talk about special teams really quick, specifically Jason Myers. A couple things about Jason Myers. In the previous stream before this game, I had said that I would prefer Michael Dixon to do kickoffs because I believe he is a better placement kicker and he can put the ball in advantageous situations. We had 2 cases with Jason Myers today. One where on the first kickoff, he kicked it and then he ended up making the tackle. So good for Jason Myers for shoving the guy out of bounds outside. Maybe that was him doing a poor placement kick. Maybe it was just our defensive special teams guys getting beat and not being able to get in position to make the play. I think one guy did miss a tackle, but he was pretty far off. But later in the game, Myers kicked it short, and that gave the Chargers the ball at the 40. Remember, if you kick it for a touchback, they get it at the 30. If you kick it short before the 20-yard line, then they get it at the 40. And I have said many times that if your special teams unit can get at least to the 40 every play, you should win most games because you only need about 25 yards to get into field goal range and then hit that shit. So if you can get 25 yards a drive starting at the 40 and then actually hit those field goals, there's no wasted drives. Because if you remember what I always say, a punt is a turnover. There was punting today, but most importantly on the offensive side, we were just holding on to the ball. We were moving the chains. We were making the completions. We were making the plays that needed to be done. So Michael Dixon didn't get a lot of work. But when he did, it was pretty obvious that he is just the better placement kicker because he kept downing it within the 10, within the 5. And so I just think he's more suited to that type of game. Jason Myers isn't a placement kicker. He's a power kicker. He's going to try to kick that thing as hard as he can, as far as he can, and make it into a very specific spot, which happens to be directly in front of him. And when we saw him do his kickoffs, there was some accuracy problems, and Michael Dixon has just never had that. So I would like to see him compete for the kickoff position, but it might just be they don't want to wear their punter's leg out. So they're just going to let the kicker continue to do that. As far as offense goes, before that, Chenault, the running back who is doing kickoff returns, looks really fucking explosive. And he looks like he's able to read his blocks, which is the whole point of the new kickoff system as far as scheme goes, is that there's more advantageous blocking and more advantageous schemes. You can have somebody pull and get into a good position, right? It looks like a very long, stretched out running play, and Chenault took advantage of that, and I'm excited to see what he does because there was talk that D. Williams or D. Eskridge would be the returners, but from what I saw, Chenault looks much better, and I'm not a fan of Eskridge to begin with. All right, on offense, again, starting with the center moving out, where I think that our defensive tackles in particular are the dominant side of the ball. On the offensive side, I would say that our interior line is what's making this engine hum. From Harris, who just had one drive, to Oluwatimi, who had a ton of snaps. Anthony Bradford played a lot of right guard and then moved to left guard. Christian Haynes played a lot of left guard and then moved to right guard. They were all over. Those guys are fucking units. Tomlinson is a fucking unit. Every single snap he won. The only problems we seriously had with our line was the tackles, which are not our starting tackles, but we have Stone Forsyth from that 2020 draft where the only other players we had were Eskridge and Trey Brown. And I had said he might get some snaps at left tackle, even though he's listed as right tackle right now on ESPN. And he played most of the game at left tackle. And I don't want that man to start. I do not want him to start at all. He's good at half the game. He's really good at run blocking, and I saw him constantly get onto his target and move that man, right? Clear him, set him so that the runner can come behind his block. But when it came to pass blocking, he doesn't look comfortable kicking, stepping, and then setting into his target. And there were many plays where he just got blown by and Sam Howell ended up getting rocked. So that's concerning. But on the other side, we had this guy Curtis starting, and he was even worse. Even with help from our tight ends, who I was not impressed with their blocking either. Anthony Bradford, that dude, why can't I remember his name? He ends up, and I gotta look up his name. Not Anthony Bradford. Noah Fant, Pharaoh Brown. Who's the other one? AJ Barner. Yeah, 88 AJ Barner, listed as our 5th string. He was not great. he was the best out of everyone that was there, but I would be very terrified if he was our 6th O-line regularly. I think that's going to be more of a Noah Fant thing, surprisingly. More likely that they just constantly motion them out from the tight end spot to flanker. AJ Barner had that happen to him a lot in Michigan, and so he was blocking corners outside. But I don't want any of our tight ends blocking a linebacker or defensive end. It wasn't as bad as our running backs trying to pass block. Even though our running backs were gashing them all day long, we weren't getting a lot of good, consistent blocking, and it was constantly ending plays. It did set up some interesting situations when trying to evaluate Sam Howell, who I was worried he was going to have ghosts. And because the interior of the offensive line was so good, especially compared to the interior he had with the Commanders last year, he didn't appear to be twitchy, which is really good when you consider mental evaluation. How is this guy going to respond when under pressure? Is he going to start to go back to his old ways? He still has the habit of, I'm going to escape, but he's looking downfield and makes throws. So I would be curious to see how he performed with good tackles and with DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. Jackson Smith and Jigba did start, and he had a couple really good run blocks, which was cool to see. Because he's not the biggest guy, right? But if Puka Nacua can run block, then you can fucking run block, dude. And I really enjoyed watching him get to the second level and make the blocks that he did. A lot of big open running lanes. And if you get some good running backs in there like Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet, you know, instead of Kenny McIntosh, who does look good, right? But he's not a Walker. He's not a Charbonnet so far. You can get some big explosive runs behind a good interior line with solid second level blocking. Second level blocking is harder to get to. So when you then look at PJ Walker, I was worried about his completion percentage because historically he averages mid 50s to mid 40s in his completion percentage. I noticed he has a processing issue. So his first 3 steps, if you're trying to make a third step throw, he's autopilot or overthinking. He can't process, I think, the first 3 steps. He can't process what the opposing defense is doing and therefore know how to just naturally do this. Like trying to walk by somebody in the grocery store and instead of going shoulder to shoulder, you just know to switch your sides. It looks like he's thinking really hard the first 3 steps. But step 5 and step 7, he was really accurate, particularly on deep dig routes. He kept hitting players on like 2nd and 10, 3rd and 10 for a deep dig route. He hit a nice out route. So any plays where a guy's going to make a move by step 5 and then you got to hit him on step 7, he was killing that shit. Especially since those can be danger throws. Those can be throws you can get picked off. Those first 3 steps, though, the ball was getting swatted because he had poor anticipation of what a defender is going to do breaking onto a check. And then once that got in his head, you can see him try to pump fake guys that didn't need to be pump faked. Guys that were crashing on the run, and then he's busy staring that guy down, right? His anticipation is poor. He doesn't know how to adjust in the aisle without going shoulder to shoulder. And so that led to a lot of incompletions, but also it led to a lot of poor decision making that was getting him rocked. Now, granted, at the time, Curtis was still playing at right tackle, and it didn't go well. Michael Jarrell, interestingly enough, did start that first drive for the Seahawks, but mostly we just saw a lot of this guy Curtis. Jalen Sundell, I didn't actually see him play. He probably played in the fourth quarter when I was no longer paying attention to the offensive line. But George Fant definitely didn't start. So if Abraham Lucas is out because of injury, which he, in my mind, 95% he'll miss half the season this year because that's just what his health has dictated. George Fant should be a good backup if he's not even getting reps. There's a reason why they didn't give the old man a start. Hankins on the defensive side, similar thing, where I would expect him to be a supplementary role. But if somebody goes down, like Leonard Williams or Draymond Jones, I would think that Hankins would probably get the start over Byron, unless Byron wins that job in the next couple weeks. But on the offensive line, I keep saying the biggest hole is tackle, and particularly right tackle. And we can't rely on Abe Lucas. We do have George Fant, but think of it this way. We have Charles Cross, George Fant, and then Abe Lucas, who's always hurt. After that, we have Stone Forsythe, who can basically only run block and get smeared in pass blocking. We had that dude, that frog Curtis, right, who was, somebody got that reference. We got that frog Curtis, who looks like a project. He looks like a fourth string tackle, and he technically is like a fifth or sixth string tackle. And then Michael Jarrell looked all right. Michael Jarrell, in the brief amount of snaps that I saw him in, he looked all right. So if they were trying to evaluate who to keep behind Michael Jarrell, where you keep Stone Forsythe at left tackle as the backup left tackle, then Michael Jarrell might have played well enough in that drive, right, for them to decide to keep him. Wide receivers, it was hard to evaluate this one because we were running all over the place. We were absolutely gashing them. I would say that our wide receivers have had really good hands. And if that is an indication for Tyler Lockett, who had a poor year last year with drops, and then if DK Metcalf, who historically has not reached the catch rate that fans would like him to have, in a new culture, we might have some good hands. It feels like this offense was really on point. Yesterday or the day before, I talked about how switching from Tom Cable to Mike Solari, the thing I wanted to see was consistency. Can the group play basic ass football? And we saw that. We saw that with the defensive side in particular, where it's like, oh, these guys obviously know what they're doing. They've played football before. They know how to make the tackles and do the things. We're not asking them to do anything special because it's preseason. Can they just play the goddamn game? And they could. Whereas in previous seasons, we were kind of getting shredded. And then on the offense in preseason, right? But it would happen until about week 4 or week 6 as well. We would just never get it together until it reached today's point, right? Imagine in preseason week 1, your team is playing the way that your team plays in week 7 of the season. That's what it felt like today. We'll see in next week, right, when we play a different team. But it's not like teams are breaking down tape of us. It's about how you fundamentally play football. On the offensive side, our interior plays some damn good fucking fundamental football. Our receivers, running backs, good fundamental football. Tackles are the weak spot. But they're not supposed to be the starters. So what does that mean, right? We'll figure it out. But it just makes me think of Mike Macdonald. I've been talking about, and Leslie Frazier, and Kirk Olividotti, and then I still am not so sure about Ryan Grubb and company. But just Mike Macdonald his camp was about installing. We're 15% there with our plan. We're 50%. We're set, right? They kept giving us this percentage update that I had no idea what that actually meant. And it's different than when Pete Carroll would run his camps, because his camps were, we're going to focus on explosives. We're going to create explosives and stop explosives. We're going to throw deep balls fucking constantly. We're going to have high energy. We're going to pogo stick. There was no pogo sticking before the game. There was high energy on the field and intensity observing the field instead of, hey, we're just hanging out and having fun. And so I think we got a bunch of fucking killers on the squad. I think we got a lot of guys who knew how to play football really well, who were capable of playing football really well, and kept underperforming because of mindset. And mindset can be everything in a team sport. How are you all as a group competing? And we just had a training camp the other day where we had 5 fights on the field. Yeah, it looks like we got a bunch of fucking brawlers out there that are hungry. And it's not to say that a lot of NFL players and teams aren't hungry, but they know what to do with their hunger. They know how to go out and attack like a goddamn pack. And attack they did on both sides of the ball. It'll be interesting to see what would happen next week when I believe Geno Smith is expected to come out and start for at least a drive. Because he's just a better thrower. Sam Howell made good throws, but I'd say PJ Walker had better touch. Sam just knows how to make that shit happen. It had better processing, right? But I don't think his arm is as pretty as PJ Walker's was. But yeah, like, this team came across prepared in the most basic sense of prepared, right? I'm not asking you to get a ton of picks, which we happen to. I'm not asking you to completely smother every single drive, which we did look smothering. I'm just asking, can you, when you get in position, make the tackle? Unless the guy that you're trying to tackle makes a hell of a play. It should not be easy in the NFL to catch the ball and then pick up another 10 yards, which was driving me insane under the Pete Carroll defense. But right now, what we're seeing is it's really hard for the Chargers in particular to do anything, right? They're just scratching to get a single play off. That's solid, right? Make them beat us instead of just falling flat on our face. When Russell Wilson had that offensive line that was horrible basically his entire time in Seattle, it didn't matter how good our defense played because our offense kept beating itself. We would play one of the worst defenses in the league thinking we're going to kick their butt, and we would win 13-10. Embarrassing. And then the reverse happened the last few years with Pete Carroll, where we would put up 30 points, but we would lose 40-30. Embarrassing. No more. If you're going to beat us, you need to earn it. That goes for both sides of the ball. And we're not trying to reinvent the wheel here. Mike Macdonald probably will later down the road. Apparently Ryan Grubb has some fun stuff planned. But I'm not asking you to reinvent the wheel. I'm asking you to play good, sound, fundamental football every single snap. And then the reason you lose is because somebody made a hell of a play on you. Because that's just football at that point. The hell of the plays you can erase with good scheme. But your scheme doesn't matter if your guys can't play fucking football. And I'm thinking now, just picture this. Jerron Reed at nose. Leonard Williams on the right side of him at 3 tech. Byron Murphy on the left side of him at 3 tech. And then you have them offset, slide over before the snap. and then have Boye Mafe or Uchenna Nwosu on the other side. Heck, let's even do a 5-2 where you just have Boye and Uchenna. Uchenna, Murphy, Reed, Williams, and Mafe. We don't even have Draymond Jones listed in that, but that alone would be a top 5 defensive line unit in the league if Mafe is as advertised. If Byron Murphy is as advertised, and that dude was having 3 people try to stop him from reaching the quarterback. He was getting involved on every single run stop. He was all over the field. He only played 20 snaps, but it was carnage. He was going up against first round pick Joe Alt. And it was carnage. As advertised. Would be defensive player of the year type of play in preseason week 1, right? So let's not get ahead of ourselves. But we just don't get a lot of hype because we're in Seattle. It's like how Devin Witherspoon last year had this amazing season where he even out-sacked Jalen Carter and he didn't win Defensive Player of the Year. Bullshit, right? And it's like how Reek Woolen, his rookie year, had set records left and right, and they gave it to Sauce Gardner because of the market. It's bullshit, right? So Byron Murphy might not get Defensive Player of the Year, but if he plays like he did today, every single game, heck, if he even gets better and starts having these games where he gets 2 or 3 sacks every single game, and they're like, man, we got a plan for Byron Murphy. We're putting 3 guys on him, and it doesn't matter. 3 guys and then a running back, right? He's still blowing us up. That's some Aaron Donald shit. And that's a scary thing to say, because that's like saying, oh, this guy's the next Patrick Mahomes, right? This next coach is the next Bill Belichick. That's some scary shit to say. Like, why are you putting those expectations on anybody? I don't like putting expectations on players. And so if he doesn't turn into Aaron Donald, my gut feeling is that would be a disappointment based off of what I've seen. And that's an absurd thing to say, because Byron Murphy, by all accounts, is his own person, and he could still have an outstanding career and not be Aaron Donald level. He might not even be Hall of Fame level. We're talking about a rookie who played in his first preseason game, but he has that potential, right? He has the potential to be a multi Pro Bowler. He has the potential to be an All Pro if he plays like that every single game. But he's got to do it every week. He's got to do it every week, and he's got to do it against guys that aren't backups or rookies. And that is an absurd expectation to put on a player. I don't know. Tell me what you guys think in the comments below. I think I covered everything that I can right now. We're going to try to be civil about this. If the expectations fall flat on their face and we start looking like the same old Seahawks next week, I'm going to try to be civil. But right now I have nothing but accolades to throw. Here's your roses. And obviously we have holes. Injuries could be a thing, right? But we have so much depth at all of our schematic positions on the interior offensive line and the interior D line. We have so much damn depth that I don't really see our scheme falling apart. So next week I'm going to try to heavily evaluate the cornerbacks a little bit more. And I'm going to try to look at the receiving core a little bit more. But as far as the trenches, aside from tackles, we're good to go, assuming they continue this level of play, right? There are going to be good teams that we go up against. We didn't play Joey Bosa today, right? We have to play Nick Bosa twice a year. So there is definitely lots of potential for us to get our butts kicked. But I have a hard time seeing us completely fall apart. We should be a top 10 unit on both sides of the ball. Special teams, I'm not so sure. But as far as defense, I mean, our defensive line alone should be top 5. The defense itself has a potential to be top 10. And our offense definitely, absolutely, 100% should be top 10. And if Ryan Grubb's scheme is good, could be top 5. Yeah. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Please like the video and subscribe to First Kick Seahawks. I'm Camden McLaren, and I will see you later.